The late afternoon sun of Charleston beat down hard on the Magnolia Manor estate that May afternoon. Guests began to arrive, dressed in their finest, greeting family members they hadn't seen in months or even years, with hearty hugs. The sweet scent of gardenias and the soft sound of a string quartet blended in the air, creating that celebratory atmosphere only a grand Southern wedding can achieve. Simone Harper took a final look at herself in the mirror of the suite assigned to her at the estate. At 32 years old, her face reflected a serene beauty, framed by her black hair, pulled back into an elegant low bun, and adorned with tiny white flowers. Her immaculate white gown, custom-made by a renowned designer, featured subtle lace detailing and had been modeled after the one her mother wore on her wedding day. "Are you ready, honey?" asked Miss Beverly Harper, Simone's mother, peeking through the doorway. The 60-year-old woman, dressed in a turquoise silk suit, looked at her daughter with a mix of pride and worry. "Yes, Mama," Simone replied, though her voice betrayed a hint of uncertainty. Beverly approached and took her daughter's hands. "You know you still have time, Simone. You don't have to go through with this if you're not sure." Simone shook her head, trying to project a certainty she didn't fully feel. "Preston is a good man, Mama. He loves and respects me, and I love him too." Beverly sighed. She knew her daughter too well not to notice what was missing from that statement. It wasn't the overflowing excitement of a woman madly in love, about to marry the man of her dreams. It was more the practical resignation of someone who had made a sensible decision. "Affection and respect are important, but so is passion, baby. Your father and I," Beverly began. "I know, Mama," Simone interrupted with a sad smile. "You two had a storybook romance, but not all of us are that lucky." Preston Kincaid waited at the improvised altar in the estate gardens. At 38, he was an attractive, successful man. His dark gray bespoke suit highlighted his athletic build, the result of his daily sessions at the gym. As one of the top corporate litigators in Atlanta, Georgia, he had built an impeccable career, defending influential business executives and politicians. His face displayed the confidence of a man accustomed to getting what he wants. Beside him, as his best man, stood Julian Sterling, his partner at the firm and a friend since their law school days. Julian, a 37-year-old man who was shorter than Preston but had an equally strong presence, watched the guests with a touch of nervousness, as if he were looking for someone in the crowd. "Stop fidgeting," Preston murmured. "You look more anxious than I do." Julian forced a tight smile. "Sorry, it's just—" He paused as if unsure how to continue. "It's just what?" Preston asked, looking at him curiously. "Nothing, forget it. Today's your day," Julian replied, adjusting his tie. "Simone is a great woman. You're lucky." Preston smiled smugly. "I know. Beautiful, smart, good family. The perfect wife for a man like me." Julian glanced sideways, uncomfortable with the comment, which sounded more like an asset valuation than a declaration of love. The music changed, signaling the bride's arrival. All the guests stood. Simone appeared on the arm of her father, Dr. Anthony Harper, a respected physician in the Low Country, known for his humanitarian work in underserved communities. The 65-year-old man walked tall, with the dignity of someone giving away their most precious treasure. As they advanced down the aisle formed between the flower-decorated chairs, Simone maintained a serene smile, though her eyes revealed an internal struggle. She couldn't help but remember Elias, her first love, the man she had planned to marry before fate and her own decisions separated them. Elias Dupree, a talented but humbly raised architect, had been her college sweetheart, where they had both dreamed of a future together. But family pressures, job opportunities in different cities, and their own insecurities had ended the relationship 5 years ago. Now, walking toward Preston, Simone kept repeating to herself that she was doing the right thing. Preston was stable, secure, a man who could offer her a life without financial worries. It didn't matter that she didn't feel butterflies in her stomach when she saw him. Romantic love, she thought, was for novels and movies, not for real life. When she reached the altar, her father placed her hand in Preston's, who received it with a triumphant smile. The ceremony began, and while the justice of the peace spoke about commitment and married life, Simone tried to focus on the present moment, on the reasons she had agreed to marry Preston. But a part of her kept recalling the laughs shared with Elias, the simple but hopeful plans, the looks that needed no words. The time for the vows arrived. Preston spoke first with the eloquence of a lawyer accustomed to swaying juries. His words were perfect, measured, almost poetic. He promised respect, faithfulness, and support through good times and bad. The guests nodded, moved by the apparent sincerity of his words. When it was Simone's turn, a knot formed in her throat. The words she had prepared now seemed empty, mechanical. She took a breath and began to speak, mentioning the day she met Preston at that business dinner, how his gentlemanly manner had impressed her, how their relationship had grown based on mutual respect and shared goals. As she spoke, her eyes swept over the guests and stopped, frozen, on a figure who had just arrived and was standing at the back of the ceremony. Elias Dupree, thinner than she remembered, but with the same intense gaze she had loved, watched her with a mixture of sadness and resignation. Simone lost her train of thought. An uncomfortable silence fell over the venue. Preston looked at her strangely and followed the direction of her gaze. His expression changed instantly, hardening. He knew Elias from the stories Simone had told him. He knew Elias had been important to her, though he had always minimized that relationship. "Please continue," Preston murmured with a tense smile, squeezing Simone's hand slightly. She blinked, returning to the present, and finished her vows in a trembling voice. The ceremony continued, but something had shifted. The tension between the couple was palpable. When it came time to sign the marriage certificate, Simone's hands were shaking so much she could barely hold the pen. The reception was held in the main ballroom of the estate, a spacious area with high ceilings and typical Southern-style limestone walls. The tables, covered with white linens and tropical flower centerpieces, were arranged around a central dance floor. The band played regional soul music, alternating with classics that kept the guests on the floor. Simone and Preston, seated at the main table with their parents and the wedding party, received congratulations from the approaching guests. She smiled mechanically while her mind wandered, wondering why Elias had attended, who had invited him, what he was doing now, if he was happy. "Excuse me a moment," Preston said, suddenly standing up. "I need to speak with Julian about something." Simone nodded, relieved to have a moment alone. From her table, she could see Elias in a corner of the room, talking with old college classmates. He hadn't approached her to say hello, and she was torn between the need to speak with him and the fear of what that conversation might awaken. Preston walked toward Julian, who was chatting with some guests near the bar. Preston's expression was serious, contained. "Can we talk privately?" Preston asked with a false smile, so as not to alert others. Julian nodded, and they both moved away to a side terrace where no one could hear them. "What the heck is Elias Dupree doing at my wedding?" Preston spat out as soon as they were alone. Julian paled slightly. "I invited him. We've been friends since we worked together on that project in Chicago. I didn't think it would be a problem." "You didn't think?" Preston let out a dry laugh. "You know perfectly well what happened between him and Simone. I saw the way she looked at him during the ceremony. He almost ruined her vows." "Preston, that was years ago," Julian replied, trying to calm his friend. "Simone chose you. You're married now. You shouldn't feel threatened by an ex-boyfriend from college." Preston narrowed his eyes, studying Julian. "There's something else, isn't there? Something you're not telling me." Julian shifted his gaze uncomfortably. "I don't know what you're talking about." "I've known you for 15 years, Julian. I know when you're hiding something." Preston stepped closer, intimidating. "Talk now." Julian sighed deeply. "Look, this is not the time or the place for this. It's your wedding. You should be celebrating with Simone, not obsessing over Elias." "Tell me," Preston insisted, his voice dropping to a threatening whisper. Julian ran a hand through his hair, visibly nervous. "It's just a rumor, okay? Elias mentioned something when we had a couple of drinks a few months ago. He said he and Simone had seen each other a few times this last year." Preston felt as if he'd been punched in the gut. What are you saying? That Simone has been seeing her ex behind my back? No, not exactly, Julian quickly clarified. He didn't hint that anything romantic happened, he just said they ran into each other, that they talked. He seemed more nostalgic than someone who is in a secret relationship. Preston took a deep breath, trying to control his rage. And why did Simone never mention these encounters to me? Julian shrugged. Maybe they meant nothing to her? Or maybe she was afraid of how you'd react. You're not exactly known for your understanding when it comes to your partner's exes. Preston shot him a murderous look. Now you're blaming me? I'm not blaming anyone, Julian replied, holding up his hands in a peacekeeping gesture. I'm just saying, maybe it's not a big deal. People run into their exes, they talk, they catch up. It doesn't have to mean anything. Preston didn't seem convinced. I'm going to find out what's going on, he murmured, turning to head back to the ballroom. Preston, wait, Julian called, but his friend was already walking away decisively. Meanwhile, Simone had gathered the courage to approach Elias, taking advantage of the fact that he was momentarily alone. I didn't expect to see you here, she said, stopping a couple of feet away. Elias looked at her, and his eyes reflected a mix of contradictory emotions. Julian invited me. I hesitated a lot about coming, but I wanted to see you one last time, I guess. To congratulate you. Simone felt a lump in her throat. Thank you for coming. It means a lot to me. An awkward silence settled between them, heavy with unspoken words and unresolved feelings. You look beautiful, Elias finally said. Preston's a lucky man. Simone tried to smile, but her eyes welled up with tears. Elias, He gently interrupted her. Don't say anything you might regret. It's your day. You should be happy. She nodded, subtly wiping away a tear. Are you happy, Elias? How have things been? I'm good, he replied with a sad smile. The project in Seattle finally took off. I'm moving there next month for at least 3 years. Seattle? Simone felt as if something broke inside her. That's wonderful, a great opportunity. It is, Elias confirmed. A new beginning, I suppose, like yours today. Simone wanted to say more, to ask him if he ever thought about her, if he regretted how things ended, if he also felt that a part of her heart would always belong to what they had. But before she could articulate any of these questions, she felt a presence behind her. Preston had returned to the ballroom just in time to see Simone approach Elias. He had watched them from a distance, studying their body language, the familiarity with which they spoke, the barely contained emotion in his now wife's eyes. And with every passing second, his anger grew. I see you've already greeted Elias, he said, stepping beside Simone and wrapping a possessive arm around her waist. What a surprise to find him here, right, darling? His falsely cordial tone fooled no one. Simone tensed, sensing the danger in Preston's apparent calm. Julian invited him, she replied, trying to maintain a casual tone. We were just catching up. Yes, Julian mentioned that to me, Preston said, not taking his eyes off Elias. He also told me about your casual encounters over the last year. Simone paled. She had seen Elias 3 times in the last year, chance meetings that had turned into coffee conversations. Nothing inappropriate had happened, but she knew Preston wouldn't see it that way. She had chosen not to mention them to avoid unnecessary conflict. They weren't planned encounters, Preston, she explained, trying to keep her cool. We ran into each other by chance a couple of times. We had coffee, talked about our lives. We're adults, there's nothing wrong with that. Then why didn't you tell me? Preston's voice grew tenser. Because I knew you would react exactly the way you're reacting now, Simone retorted, starting to get angry. You're making a scene at our wedding over something insignificant. Elias, uncomfortable, tried to leave. I think I should go. No, stay, Preston said, his voice laced with sarcasm. After all, he seems to be an important part of my wife's life, so important that she meets with you behind my back. Preston, you're overreacting, Simone intervened, aware that some guests were beginning to look their way. Please, don't do this, not today. But Preston was too agitated to listen to reason. The alcohol he had consumed during the reception, combined with his jealousy and wounded pride, clouded his judgment. Overreacting? My wife hides that she sees her ex-boyfriend, and I'm overreacting? His voice rose, attracting more attention. I never cheated on you, Preston, Simone stated firmly. There was never anything inappropriate between Elias and me after we started dating, I swear to you. Then why did you hide it? Preston insisted. Why were you so emotional when you saw him at the ceremony that you could barely finish your vows? Simone didn't know how to respond. She couldn't deny that seeing Elias had affected her, but not in the way Preston was insinuating. Elias, seeing the situation worsen, tried to intervene. Preston, I assure you there's nothing going on between Simone and me. We're just old friends who ran into each other casually. Friends? Preston let out a bitter laugh. Please, everyone knows you were in love with her for years. You're probably still waiting for your chance. That's not fair, Simone protested. Don't speak for Elias, and don't make assumptions about my feelings. Your feelings? Preston stared at her. What exactly do you feel for him, Simone? Because your face, when you saw him during the ceremony, said it all. The music had stopped. An awkward silence spread through the ballroom as guests watched the altercation, some feigning distraction, others openly curious. I'm not going to discuss this here, Simone said, trying to move away. You're embarrassing yourself. Preston grabbed her arm, preventing her from leaving. No, we're going to clear this up now. I want everyone to know who I married. Preston, let go of me, Simone demanded, trying to free herself. Do you love him? Preston asked, ignoring her plea. Do you still have feelings for him? This is absurd, Simone exclaimed. Let go of me. You're hurting me. Elias stepped forward, concerned. Preston, calm down. You're crossing the line. Stay out of this, Preston shouted, pushing Elias with his free hand. Several guests approached, including Julian and some of Simone's cousins, attempting to de-escalate the situation. Answer me, Preston demanded, shaking Simone slightly. Do you love him? No, she screamed desperately. I don't love him. Is that what you wanted to hear? But her trembling voice and glistening eyes told another story, and Preston noticed it. Something broke inside him. All the rage, jealousy, and humiliation he felt exploded in a single moment. His hand moved before he could think, and a slap echoed in the silence of the ballroom. The sound of the slap seemed to freeze time. For an instant, no one moved or spoke. Simone, her cheek already red, looked at Preston with disbelief, as if she couldn't process what had just happened. The silence was broken by gasps of astonishment and disapproval. Beverly let out a choked cry, and Dr. Anthony Harper, Simone's father, stepped forward, his face contorted with rage. Take your hands off my daughter right now, the man demanded, his voice trembling with contained anger. Preston, seemingly waking from a trance, released Simone's arm and stepped back. His expression reflected a mix of shock at his own actions and an obstinate pride that prevented him from apologizing. Simone, honey, Beverly murmured, moving closer to hug her daughter. Are you all right? But Simone didn't answer. Her gaze was fixed on Preston, and in her eyes was something new. A sudden clarity, as if a veil had been lifted. All the doubts, the justifications, the excuses she had given herself during her relationship with Preston vanished in that instant. Never, Simone finally said, her voice low but firm. You will never lay a hand on me again. Preston, recovering some of his composure, tried to downplay what had happened. Simone, I'm sorry, I just lost it for a second. You know I'm not like that. You're not like that? She repeated with a bitter laugh. You're not the kind of man who controls every aspect of my life, who criticizes my clothes, my friends, my decisions, who makes me feel small every time I have a different opinion than yours, who has been slowly driving me away from everything I love. Preston paled at these words, not because they were false, but because he never expected Simone to say them publicly in front of all their friends and family. You're exaggerating, he said, trying to regain control of the situation. You're upset because of Elias, but we can talk about this privately. There's nothing left to talk about, Simone replied, with a calm that contrasted with the chaos surrounding them. This wedding was a mistake, and thank goodness I realized it before it was too late. Preston looked at her in disbelief. What are you saying? We're already married. You're my wife. Not for long, Simone asserted, pulling off her wedding ring and leaving it on the nearest table. This ends here. A murmur rippled through the ballroom. Guests watched the scene with a mixture of horror and fascination. Like spectators of an accident they couldn't look away from. You can't do this, Preston said, his voice rising again. You can't humiliate me like this in front of everyone. Humiliate you? Simone shook her head, incredulous. You just slapped me in public. You've been treating me like an object. No, Preston, you're the one who has humiliated me, and not just today. Dr. Anthony Harper stepped between the two. I think you should leave, Preston. You've done enough damage. This is ridiculous, Preston exclaimed, looking around as if seeking support. One little argument and everyone acts like I'm a monster. A little argument doesn't include physical violence, Julian intervened, approaching his friend with a grave expression. Come on, Preston, I'll take you home. I don't need anyone to take me anywhere. Preston shoved Julian away. This is my wedding. She's my wife. Not anymore, Simone declared firmly. It's over, Preston. Elias, who had remained silent until that moment, stepped toward Dr. Harper. Dr. Harper, I think we should call security. Preston, seeing Elias speak with Simone's father, lost what little control he had left. This is all your fault. He lunged toward Elias, but several men, including Julian and some of Simone's cousins, intercepted him before he could reach him. Get him out of here, Dr. Harper ordered, and the estate's security guards quickly approached. As Preston was escorted out of the ballroom, shouting threats and insults, Simone stood firm, surrounded by her closest family and friends. Her mother hugged her, weeping, while her father gave instructions to the staff to tend to the guests and explain that the celebration was over. I'm so sorry, Simone said, addressing those present. I apologize that you had to witness that. You have nothing to be sorry for, baby, Dr. Harper assured her. You did the right thing. Little by little, the guests began to leave, murmuring among themselves, some clearly scandalized, others expressing their support for Simone. The music had completely stopped, and the servers moved discreetly, clearing half-eaten plates and glasses. When the ballroom was nearly empty, Simone collapsed into a chair, physically and emotionally drained. Her mother sat beside her, taking her hands in hers. I always knew there was something I didn't like about him, Beverly confessed, but I thought it was just that no man would ever seem good enough for you. Simone smiled faintly. I should have listened to you, Mama. I should have listened to my heart. It's never too late to do the right thing, her mother replied, stroking her reddened cheek. I am proud of you, Simone. Many women would have stayed, would have forgiven him, would have believed it was just a moment of anger. I would have believed it too, until today, Simone admitted. But when he hit me, it was like I suddenly saw clearly all the little signs of control, of manipulation. They were always there, but I ignored them because I wanted to believe I was doing the right thing, that I was choosing security, stability. True love can also be secure and stable, Beverly said. Your father and I have had our rough patches, but never, not in our worst fights, did we disrespect each other that way. Simone nodded thoughtfully, looking around this semi-empty ballroom. The floral arrangements that had cost a fortune, the wedding cake no one would taste, all the money, time, and energy invested in a day that was supposed to be the start of a life together and had ended in disaster. Yet, strangely, she didn't feel as devastated as she should have. There was a sense of liberation, as if a weight she hadn't even known she was carrying had been lifted. What am I going to do now? She murmured, more to herself than to her mother. What you've always wanted to do, Beverly replied. Live your life on your own terms, without compromises that make you unhappy. Elias appeared in the ballroom doorway, hesitating to approach. He had been helping coordinate the guests' departure, and making sure Preston truly left the property. Simone saw him, and something stirred within her. It wasn't the right time, she told herself. She had just ended a relationship, canceled a wedding. She needed time to heal, to rediscover herself, without the influence of Preston or any other man. "Elias," she called, gesturing for him to come closer. "Thank you for your help." He advanced cautiously, respecting the space he knew she needed. "You don't have to thank me. How are you?" "I'll survive," she replied with a small smile. "I always do." "You are the strongest woman I know," Elias said with genuine admiration. "What you did today takes a courage that few people have." Simone felt herself blush slightly. "I don't know if it was courage or just that I reached my limit." "Sometimes they are the same thing," Dr. Harper intervened, joining the conversation. "Elias, thank you for your help. Can I offer you something to drink? I think we all need a moment to process what happened." "Thank you, Dr. Harper, but I should probably leave," Elias replied. "My presence here would only complicate things more for Simone." "Nonsense," Beverly said firmly. "You're a friend of the family, and after what happened, I think Simone needs to be surrounded by people who genuinely care about her." Elias looked at Simone for her approval. She nodded, almost imperceptibly. "A coffee would be nice, thank you." While Dr. Harper walked away to order coffee, Simone, her mother, and Elias sat at a secluded table. The estate staff continued to discreetly clear up, keeping their distance to respect the family moment. "I can't believe this is happening," Simone murmured, looking at her wedding dress, now wrinkled and with a small wine stain on the hem. "A few hours ago, I thought I'd be dancing with my husband, celebrating the start of our life together." "And now you are starting a new life," Beverly completed, "one where you respect yourself enough not to let anyone treat you badly." "Your mother is right," Elias added softly. "What you did today saved you from years of suffering. Believe me, I've seen too many cases like this in my community work." Simone looked at him curiously. "Community work?" Elias smiled. "Besides architecture, I collaborate with a foundation that helps women who are victims of domestic violence. We design and build safe shelters for them and their children." "I didn't know that," Simone said, surprised. "That's admirable." "Not as much as it seems. I'm just trying to do my part." Elias paused, hesitating before continuing. "Simone, about what happened between us years ago." "No," she interrupted, raising a hand. "Not today. It's been too intense of a day." Elias nodded, respecting her decision. "Of course. I understand." Dr. Harper returned with a server who poured coffee. As they talked about the practicalities of what would come next, canceling the honeymoon, informing distant relatives, starting the process to annul the marriage, Simone felt a strange inner peace, as if despite the chaos surrounding her, for the first time in a long time, she was exactly where she needed to be. 3 months had passed since that day at the Magnolia Manor estate. The stifling heat of the low country summer had given way to the first September rains, which cooled the streets of Charleston and turned its parks green again. Simone was sitting on the patio of a small cafe in the historic district, watching people pass under their multicolored umbrellas. In front of her sat a cup of cinnamon coffee and an open notebook where she occasionally wrote. Her hair was loose, shorter than before, and she was wearing a simple white blouse, embroidered with red flowers. The last few months had been a whirlwind of changes. After the failed wedding, Preston had tried to contact her several times, alternating between desperate apologies and veiled threats. Simone, advised by an attorney specializing in domestic violence cases, had successfully filed for a restraining order. The marriage annulment was underway, although Preston was trying to delay it with various legal maneuvers. The news had spread quickly through social circles in Atlanta and Charleston. Some criticized Simone for exaggerating and destroying her marriage over a simple argument, while others applauded her bravery. She had learned to ignore both reactions, focusing on rebuilding her life step by step. The first thing she did was resign from her public relations job in Atlanta, where she had met Preston. She needed distance, a fresh start. She had returned to Charleston, temporarily settling into her parents' home while deciding her next move. Then came the hardest part, confronting her own feelings. Why had she ignored so many warning signs with Preston? Why had she chosen apparent security over genuine happiness? What role did Elias truly play in all of this? A therapist was helping her untangle these questions. Little by little, Simone began to understand the patterns that had led her to that toxic relationship. The fear of failure that had prevented her from pursuing her true dreams. The social pressure she had felt to be married before 35. And now, sitting in this cafe, she was working on the project she had postponed for years. A book about extraordinary Black Southern women in history, from ancient community leaders to contemporary entrepreneurs, including civil rights pioneers like Madam C.J. Walker. "May I sit down?" a familiar voice asked. Simone looked up and smiled to see Elias, his hair damp from the rain and a shy smile on his face. He was wearing a simple gray t-shirt and jeans, so different from the formal suit she had seen him in at the wedding. "Of course," she replied, gesturing to the empty chair across from her. Elias sat down, leaving his backpack on the floor. "How's the book going?" "Progressing," Simone said, closing the notebook. "I just finished the chapter on Madam C.J. Walker, a fascinating, ahead-of-her-time woman." "Like you," Elias commented, and then blushed slightly. "Sorry, I didn't mean to sound. It's okay," Simone reassured him with a smile. "Thanks for the compliment." A waiter approached, and Elias ordered an Americano. When they were alone again, a comfortable silence settled between them. They had kept in touch over these months, first through sporadic texts, then with occasional calls, and finally with encounters like this, casual, but increasingly frequent. Elias had postponed his move to Seattle, requesting a 6-month deferment for personal reasons. He had never pressured Simone, respecting her healing process and offering his friendship without expectations. "I heard from Julian," Simone commented, breaking the silence. "Preston finally agreed to the annulment. He'll sign the papers next week." "That is great news," Elias said, visibly relieved. "How do you feel about it?" Simone reflected for a moment. "Relieved? Like I can finally close that chapter and move forward." "I'm happy for you," he replied sincerely. "And you? Any news on the Seattle project?" Elias stirred his coffee, which had just arrived. "Yeah, and actually, they offered me the chance to direct the whole project from here, only traveling occasionally for supervision." Simone looked at him surprised. "Seriously? That's unexpected." "I know," Elias said with a smile. "Apparently, my work with the foundation impressed them so much that they want me to apply that community-focused approach to the Seattle development. Plus, they're interested in expanding the initiative to other major U.S. cities, including here in the Low Country." "That is marvelous, Elias," Simone exclaimed, genuinely happy for him. "I always knew your talent would be recognized." "Thanks," he replied, and then, after a pause, added, "It means a lot coming from you." Their eyes met for an instant, and Simone felt that familiar flutter in her stomach that she had tried to ignore for months. This time, she didn't reject it. She was learning to trust her feelings again. "There's something else," Elias continued, suddenly nervous. "The project includes the rehabilitation of cultural spaces for women. When you told me about your book, I thought that maybe we could collaborate somehow. Your research on influential women could be the foundation for these spaces." Simone looked at him, surprised and touched. "Are you serious?" "Completely," Elias affirmed. "Your perspective would be invaluable, and I think we could create something truly meaningful together." "I would love that," she responded without hesitation. For the first time in a long time, she felt a genuine thrill about a professional project, an excitement that went beyond the simple satisfaction of meeting external expectations. The rain had stopped, and a ray of sunshine peeked through the clouds, lighting up the cafe patio. Simone looked at Elias, remembering the idealistic young man she had fallen in love with in college, and recognizing the mature, understanding man he had become. "You know what I sometimes think?" she said. contemplating the light playing among the water droplets on the nearby plant leaves. That slap was the best thing that could have happened to me. Elias looked at her surprised. What do you mean? It was like an awakening, Simone explained. A moment of absolute clarity that forced me to face the truth about my life, my choices, what I truly wanted. Sometimes we need a shock like that to see what was right in front of us all along. You were very brave that day, Elias said. Not everyone would have had the strength to do what you did. Simone shook her head. It wasn't bravery, it was survival. And after surviving, I learned to live again, to make decisions for myself, not for what others expected of me. And what do you expect of yourself now? Elias asked softly. Simone smiled, a genuine smile that lit up her face. To be true to what I feel. Not to be afraid to pursue what I really want. To build a life that reflects my values, not someone else's. That sounds like an excellent plan, Elias approved. And part of that plan, Simone continued, gathering her courage, is not to ignore what I still feel for you. Elias held his breath as if afraid to break the moment with any sudden movement. Simone, You don't have to say anything, she interrupted him. I know it's complicated. I know I just got out of a terrible relationship and that I need time. I'm not suggesting we pick up where we left off 5 years ago. I just wanted to be honest with you as part of this new version of myself I'm building. Elias extended his hand across the table, leaving it there, a silent invitation. After a moment, Simone placed her hand over his. We have time, he said. All the time you need. And in that moment, with the sun shining after the storm, in a small Charleston cafe, Simone felt that she had found something more valuable than any wedding ring. She had found her own path. Beverly used to say that life has a curious way of leading us exactly where we're supposed to be, even if the journey is tortuous and painful sometimes. Sitting across from Elias, feeling the warmth of his hand, Simone finally understood what her mother had tried to teach her. Sometimes the end of one road is just the beginning of a better one. And as the sun continued to break through the clouds, illuminating the puddles that reflected the blue sky, Simone knew she would be okay. More than okay. She would be whole, authentic, and finally, free. That slap at her wedding had been the end of a life that wasn't truly hers, and this coffee, this conversation, this renewed connection could be the start of something genuine. Not a fairy tale, but something much more valuable. A real story with ups and downs, with lessons learned, with growth. Her story, finally and truly her own. Did you like my story, and which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you liked the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story with love and respect.